those tutors really have an effect on the students. They see somebody that's closer in their age group, somebody that has that struggle with some of the maths more recent in their past. And they're much better placed in some ways to help from that point of view than their maths teachers are.
Welcome to the Leading With podcast, the podcast made by school leaders for school leaders. I'm Pete Mattock, the National Education Lead for Secondary Maths at Twinkl, and today I'm leading with Matt Lucas.
I'm the Widening Participation Manager at UCL.
Kath Moore.
I work for MEI and I'm the 11 to 16 lead.
And Phil Chaffee.
I'm MEI's Director for University Progression.
So, Phil, Kath, Matt, you guys have been leading a couple of projects over the last few years, looking at engaging secondary school students in Year 10 with UCL. Can you just tell us about those two projects and what those projects entail?
Yes, I can get started. So, the general aim of, I suppose, my team and the projects themselves is to support in-school attainment. So, the rationale for my team is to work with underrepresented students, predominantly those socioeconomically disadvantaged, with some of the metrics in there. And these two projects were developed, one was developed during COVID, and the one we're hopefully going to talk about a lot more today is the more recent one called UCL Accelerate. The aim is to address the attainment gap between the most advantaged students and the students who suffer the most disadvantage in education. There's a gap which starts early and widens throughout school, and attainment is still the biggest predicator of whether somebody will go to university or not. So a lot of work in this area focuses on aspiration raising, but really there's not much of an aspiration gap. There's more of an attainment gap. So students have high aspirations for themselves, but they don't quite have the attainment or the support in place to get the grades they need to get to where they want to be. So these programmes very much aim to tackle that quite specific question on how do we improve in-school attainment to ensure there's a wider pool of students eligible to come to university in the future. And this programme focuses purely on maths. So the first programme was developed during COVID, was called UCL Horizons, which I think Phil is going to give a bit more information on, which was an online model, and it was developed during COVID. And I'll let Phil tell us a little bit about the concept of that programme.
So UCL Horizons was a project that was basically all online because of COVID. So we had students that had study skills preparation, as well as a series of units on Twinkl, our online platform, for them to develop their skills and gain confidence.
And then so that programme came to the end of sort of COVID when we were allowed to go back into in person. There's some sort of feedback from schools. The evaluation of the programme was there's a little bit of sort of screen time fatigue that young people were facing. So we thought, let's start again and tried a different approach. And if we were to design a brand new maths attainment project, what would we do? So we did a very thorough literature review. We partnered with 5 London schools to get their insight. We commissioned a lot of our own research. And we decided to move from sort of the online model first to in person. We changed from a mentoring programme to a tutoring model. So they get specific maths tutoring. And we have, there's a very strong evidence base for the impact of tutoring. So we wanted to go for that model. So to get to the first question, and we've gone quite around the house a little bit, but Accelerate, broadly speaking, is a 12-week tutoring programme where we have current UCL students who are all maths students or studying maths-related subjects. They get very sort of thoroughly trained, and then they go into schools and deliver maths tutoring in small groups. So we have three pupils per tutor. So we have 15 to 20 students per school. So around 100 people on the programme in general. Each school has around 7 tutors, and they work in small groups with their tutoring group over the course of a 12-week period. The programme starts with a launch event at UCL's campus. So they come to campus, they have a campus tour. We tell them all about the programme, and then we spend some time getting to know their tutors, who they are, and they spend a good hour or so getting to know who the tutors are, the types of things they're interested in. We do like pen portraits where the students can explain the types of things. If I'm struggling to understand something, here's how I'll show it, here's how I prefer to be taught. And we try and make it sort of very much, these are not extra teachers, they're tutors, so it's a slightly different relationship. And then following the launch event, they spend 12 weeks, once a week for 12 weeks, doing tutoring on 4 different maths topics. They spend 3 weeks per topic. And then the programme culminates with a celebration event / graduation event at UCL's campus where they officially graduate from the programme. And from that, they become Accelerate graduates. And then in year 11, they will get things like how to choose the correct A-levels for you. We'll do revision tips for them in year 11. So they'll become almost a graduate from the maths programme, and then we'll start picking up more of that university progression stuff. But very much the aim of the programme in this 12 weeks, how do we get them to get better maths grades? Fundamentally, it's a very simple, singular question. And that's how we've designed it with that in mind and where we've got to now.
So the undergraduates are actually going into these schools sort of en masse, 7 at a time?
Yeah. So there's 5 London schools. It's actually, to break the fourth wall, it's about to happen now. It's Wednesday afternoons it takes place. So we've got about 35 tutors who will currently be shuttling their way around London to their schools. They stay in the same schools. We have got some return tutors who've been at the same school for 2 years now, and sort of look ahead to some of the success of the programme. One of the tutors from last year's programme graduated and now works at the school. They're at a tutor as like a teaching assistant and learning assistant as well.
Lovely. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Something that I think is quite important about the Accelerate programme, and in fact the Horizons programme as well, is that we provided a range of topics that the schools can choose from, so that they're tailoring which topics their students do to the needs of their students. So it's not, you've got to do these ones. I think we provide 8 topics and the school chooses 4 of them to do, so that they know that they're getting the support that their students need. And when we think about how we designed that topic support, we sort of thought, well, what is it we need to do? And then we sort of worked backwards a little bit. So we started with, we want them to achieve highly on exam questions. We want them to have the confidence when they're walking into the exam to give each question a go. Because if they don't do well on the question, they're not going to reach that attainment. So in order to give them that confidence, it's like, well, how can we do that? Well, one of the things that I think students do find difficult is knowing what the question's actually asking them, and to bring some of that problem-solving ability to an exam question, to be confident that, I haven't seen this question before, but I'm still going to be able to tackle it. So we build in some problem-solving. And of course, all of that has to be based on the understanding of the topic itself. So the order becomes, we sort of do some activities to embed the learning, and then do some problem solving, and then we give them some practice on exam questions, and we actually get the tutors to model exam questions so that they will do a question and then the students do a very similar mirrored question, and then in the third week they actually get a chance to do some questions sort of more independently so the tutors can support them. And all of that comes a lot sort of after putting a pre-test in place. And I think Matt's going to talk a little bit about that later on, about sort of pre-tests and post-tests that we do. But the tutors see the results of the pre-test so that they've already got an idea on what their students, their year 10 students, can already do and what they might be finding difficult. So all of that was created around this idea of how can we really build the confidence of those students so that when they walk into the exam, they're in the right mindset to be achieving highly, as well as having the knowledge in order to achieve highly.
And I guess that was MEI's role in the project, was developing those materials and what those topics to choose from were going to be, and what those exam questions were going to be, what the supporting materials were going to be. MEI designed those, and then I guess supported the UCL undergrads with sort of making use of those.
Yes, but we do some training for the UCL undergrads as well, which I think is they seem to receive quite well, and it gives them an opportunity it gives us an opportunity to explain to them what it is that we're trying to make happen. Because, of course, it's not an opportunity for the undergrads, the tutors, to show off their math skills. It's a very different skill, as all teachers know, it's a very different skill to be able to get somebody to learn how to do something rather than just sit there and be shown how to do something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are also, myself and Martin, we aren't maths specialists at all. So we design a programme, a structure, we recruit the tutors, we manage all the school partnerships. we sort of came up with a model of the programme and commissioned the research, but very much Kath and Phil and MEI in general have a maths experts who design what week 1 looks like, week 2 looks like in a maths concept, and we provide that sort of structure around it in the school relationship where it all takes place in, which is, has worked really, really well thus far, and I think we've gone from strength to strength. It was the pilot last year, and we've made quite a lot of very, very tangible sort of sweeping changes to this year's programme, which I think already are having a really, really big impact on this year's cohort. So, impatience, get the evaluation from this year already.
So, speaking of impact, what outcomes have you seen from these projects in terms of, obviously, you're talking about raising attainment, so attainment goals, but aspiration goals, kids actually, if you've got a couple of years in, kids starting to look at applications to university and things like that, what sort of outcomes have you found come from it?
So, I can run through the evaluation model. It's very thoroughly evaluated, the Accelerate project. So the results of it are going to be published at the end of our sort of access and participation plan cycle. So we have quite a thorough evaluation model where each student will sit a pre-test and a post-test. We also have a randomised control group model for this. So the students are nominated and then split in half. Half don't take part in the programme, half do. We want to really sort of put the programme under some scrutiny to see if it does have an impact. We will be collecting the GCSE results from a pilot year's cohort this coming summer, and that will be the cycle of evaluation. So pre-test, post-test, pre-survey, post-survey, and then we'll be collecting the GCSE results of all the students in the control group and participant group and doing some comparative piece between those. And then we'll also be tracking their application rates to university and their acceptance rates to university, which we'll do in an anonymised way, but we know who they are. So by the end of this sort of 4-year project cycle, we will know how did the participant group do versus the control group. Did the participants have more of a chance to go to university than the control group? But broadly speaking, the programme had quite a singular aim of how can we help these students improve in their maths GCSE. So the profile of the students is always middle attaining students. So it's working at grade of between 4 and 5 in year 10, with the end goal of trying to get them somewhere between a grade 7 at the end of year 11.
So you're looking at sort of 2-3 grades progress then?
Yeah, in a perfect world, that's where...
From a 12-week intervention?
Yeah.
You must be absolutely gasping for those results to come in the summer.
So we had the pilot last year, and we did pre-testing and post-testing. From the pilot, there was a 12 percentage points increase from pre-programme to post-programme, which we're told by our evaluation team and the researchers that it's a statistically significant impact, which it's had, which very few programmes in this area can claim to have. So, we're very, very pleased with the interim results that they went sort of a 12% increase on average across quite a large cohort, and in comparison to the control group that we had last year. Although a slightly smaller control group, there was a sort of a significant difference between the control group and participant group. And then just anecdotally, we've had some, very, very strong success stories from the programme, which we can't quantify as much as we'd like to, but we was in a school 2 weeks ago, and one of last year's participants was working at grade 4 and 5, and they've just got 79 out of 80 on their mock exam.
Wow.
On the February mocks, which is putting them on grade for an 8 or a 9, or
79 out of 80, if you've
would be a 9
across all 3 papers, is definitely a 9.
So we can't claim to take all the credit for that, but there is definitely a multiplying effect of they come on the programme. Hopefully they enjoy it. Hopefully those students who might have struggled with it previously do get that multiplying effect of they've enjoyed it for that 12 weeks, and it means they're then going to lessons, and it means they're more likely to do stuff in their own time. So in an ideal world, it would be, it's not just contained to this 12 weeks. There's a knock-on effect and an impact that sort of multiplies as the programme.
Yeah, well, I guess that makes sense, doesn't it? A kid that's engaged with the maths, found it enjoyable, really found that they've learned something and made progress.
Yeah.
Then goes on and wants to continue to build on that, and so does the work independently, attends school-based intervention or does some work outside of school, and feels more confident doing it all as well. I guess that would be, they feel like they can achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we've had, again, just on the anecdotal stuff, our teachers say that there's students from the programme last year now consistently working at that sort of grade 7 range we'd be looking for. And some students at one of our schools, they had an end of year 10 exam, and lots of them sort of directly attributed success in that to the programme and the enjoyment of the programme. And yeah, it's just been a lovely programme. There's been lots of thank you letters from the students to the tutors and vice versa. So yeah, we've got some of the sort of cold hard statistics from a pilot that was at least 12% progress. Some students was much bigger, but we've also starting to get from the second year of the programme at nicer feedback from last year's participants coming back to us, the teachers saying the difference. And we're now obviously the time of year in, a lot of schools are having their sort of February mocks, and we're starting to see that anecdotal feedback, and we're hoping it bears out in GCSEs, and we're quite confident that we've made a lot of changes from the pilot, that this year's cohort is hopefully going to be an even stronger cohort in terms of success and results.
So for our senior leaders that are listening, what would you say are the 3 most important things for them to do when they are looking at engaging with university partnerships and making university partnerships to support pupils like this?
Well, I think the first thing they should do is have a really clear idea of who this partnership should be benefiting. They know their students. They know which students need and would benefit from it, so it's a case of ensuring that those students have that access and thinking how that can be facilitated, because in a particular student situation, they might need to be putting something in place to ensure that they can actually take part in whatever activities out there.
I think something else that's really important is that the partnership is seen to be working in 2 different ways. So it's not just the schools benefiting from the university, but the university has to benefit from working with the school. So it's very much a question of keeping that communication open, so that the university has that sort of in with the school and the students there, but also the students have the opportunity to sort of, the year 10 students can work with the university tutors, but also have conversations with them about what life's like at university and things like that as well. It has to be a very much a 2-way partnership, I think.
So what do we think the benefit is then for the university students of doing this? Are they students that are perhaps considering going into the classroom later on themselves, or...
I mean, I think, yes, some of them definitely are. From when I've spoken with them, they're definitely thinking of that. The other thing that I think it does is it builds their own confidence and their communication skills, as well as, I suppose, giving them something else to add beyond I've got a degree to I've actually been involved with this and I've done something extra and something that's a little bit different that many other people applying for a job, and we know jobs aren't easy to get, but many people applying for a job haven't got, and these people have got it. So I think there is that. Certainly it's been really lovely in this second year to see some returning tutors from last year, and they are so positive and so enthusiastic about it. That was really good to see.
Excellent.
And we have as well this year, we've added in there's a little bit of progression we've put into this sort of part-time tutoring role. So we have, each school now has a senior tutor as well, so someone from last year's programme who's a tutor last year, they're now a senior tutor, so they sort of coordinate things in the school, they organise the other tutors, they're kind of, there's a slight progression rate for them to go
so
there
that's,
as well.
very nice thing to put on the CV, isn't
Yeah.
it? If you're looking at management roles or things like that.
Yeah.
Even during university, I was managing other tutors for this project and all the rest of it. Yeah, brilliant.
The tutors generally have been great, but just an absolute shining light of the programme. Like, I think when we were designing it, we knew the success of a programme would either succeed or fail depending on the tutors, how well they were trained, how confident they were. We are very lucky at UCL. We've got a huge student body of incredibly capable, talented students who apply for these roles, and they go out and every single week they're doing really, really good work. They get the schools they're in, they get the context they're in. As part of their training, we do send the tutors out before the programme starts to observe a maths lesson being taught. So if they get to observe a year 10 maths lesson being taught, we encourage them to circulate the classroom and speak to the students. And then following that maths lesson, they spend some time with the teacher, the lead teacher, to tell them the context of the school. So what is the sort of demographics of that school? The students in their group, have any sort of SEN needs, any English as an additional language needs? So they spend some time in the school and kind of do become part of the school community. And by we're currently halfway through the programme. By this point, the students, the tutors are very, very well known in the school. They make their way to and from the classrooms. The participants know them really well. The school community hopefully gets to know them really, really well. And yeah, as I said, a nice example from last year's programme was one of last year's tutors is now working full-time in the school. They're a tutor at. She's a teaching assistant in the school where she was a tutor last year.
Wow, so there's an opportunity for schools here to grow grow their own talent in days where recruiting maths graduates is not all maths-based graduates is not always the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, it's great, and we have obviously the schools we work with are schools which have a sort of a high proportion of students eligible for free school meals. In the context we are in London, we have lots of students with English as an additional language, and it's really beneficial for our tutors and our undergraduates to go into those schools and be part of it and see what's happening and be rooted in the city. We have a lot of international students at UCL, so a lot of them find it an incredible opportunity to go in and get to grips with a city which can sometimes feel a little bit transient, or that they exist in the tiny UCL university bubble, and we kind of put them on buses all over North London, East, South, West London, to these schools, which are very different to some of their own upbringings in some cases, and yeah, they really take to it.
I think there's a wider thing as well, that it's not just the students themselves at the university that are getting something out of it. The university is also finding out what it's like for schools. Because with the best will in the world, it's very hard. You're in a different type of education establishment. And things happen differently in schools, and the way in which they happen and the students they're dealing with. It's very hard for a university to get a very clear picture of that. But by doing a project like this, there's a two-way flow of information that allows the school to find out what the universities are interested in, and the university also to find out what the schools are interested in, what their problems are, and where they think their students are going and how those students are going to get there.
So if you've got other universities with people like Matt, whose job is to sort of widen that participation in universities, it actually provides people like you, Matt, I guess, important information for how they can better engage with schools from their end, because they're getting that two-way information sharing relationship with lots of different schools.
That's right. We do work with other universities as well, and it's a similar sort of thing that, you know, they will know that they want to work with certain types of students, but it's basically a case of finding out what it's like for those students in their school and what's the best way of getting them to engage in the way that's going to be of a benefit.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I would agree. There's tons of universities who have a role like mine, and we all want to work with these students and with these schools. There's lots of opportunities out there, and oftentimes it's easy for us to come up with a concept and an idea and think that'll be amazing, schools will love that, students will love that, and then we present it to a school and the reality is very different, and that two-way street is huge, particularly for this programme. They very much provided a level of scrutiny and challenge to this programme from the get-go. They chose the topics, they pushed back on a few aspects of the programme, which was very, very, very helpful. And we did have a teacher focus group with all 5 partner schools at the end of last year, where they fed back stuff which has had a direct change on this year's programme. So one of the feedbacks from last year, which has come into this year's programme, was they felt the students needed more time on each topic. So we've moved it from 2 weeks per topic to 3 weeks per topic this year. And they were also the ones who recommended we should bring in the tutors to observe a lesson before we let them go and do it. So yeah, them feeding back on what the reality is in schools is incredibly helpful, because we're sometimes a little bit more removed than we'd like to be to that on the ground practice. So yeah, we really, really value schools' input. As Phil said, it's the more schools can give us, the more helpful we can be, and hopefully vice versa. It's definitely a two-way street.
Fantastic.
There's another key thing that I think we haven't mentioned yet, and that's that schools need to consider how they make this sort of thing sustainable. It's very easy to do it for 1 year and then drop it. It's got to be something that lasts for 1 year, the next year, so that they can build on it and they get a culture in their school where perhaps it's about aspiration, but also they've got the support from the university as well that goes with their aspiration and sort of feeds it. So they need to think about how that's going to last for just more than the 1 year and the next year and the next year.
So actually, that's a really good point. Have you found from working with the schools any advice that leaders might have to actually make this part of their development rather than just bolting on and struggling to sustain it? Have you found things that schools can do well to sort of really build this into their improvement plans in a sustainable way?
I think it's part of engagement. You have to be really dedicated to making sure that your students have these opportunities. So you have to make sure that there's somebody that has ownership of this within the school, that this is somebody's thing, that they will work with the university, they'll make sure it happens, they will keep an eye on their students. It's not something that's going to work well if they just sort of like, somebody's going to come in and teach the students and then we'll just sort of wash our hands with them for that particular bit of time. They have to be engaged with it. They have to be checking up on their students, how their students are doing. They have to be finding out from the university how it's going as well. It's the sort of thing that needs to be sort of followed up. And if you do that, it's going to be successful. I mean, if a school does that, it's going to be successful. So my advice to a senior leadership person is that make sure that there is somebody there that really knows what's happening and is really engaging with the project.
Yeah, I would completely reiterate that. I think the schools which have been most successful for this project in particular are the ones who have allocated it to a specific staff member. It's planned into that staff member's work plan, their yearly cycle. So one of the teachers, it's part of their yearly appraisal. They are the accelerate contact in the school, and it's something that they're in charge of coordinating, and having that dedicated named contact who takes ownership of it from the school's behalf is huge, and when it's most successful. And sometimes when these projects don't have the success they could do is when it's a senior leader's gone, yeah, that's great, let's partner with a university, and then the practicality of doing all the many stuff you have to do, such as classroom space, staff it, administer the pre-programme tests, for post-programme tests, meet the tutors at reception. It kind of falls down there a little bit when it sounds great in concept, but the practical reality of doing it and coordinating two visits to campus, permission slips, all that sort of stuff, it needs to be sitting with someone who's is part of their role in some way to do. And yeah, the schools which have that, and we have a really dedicated contact, we have, luckily very good relationships with our 5 schools, but that's just because we have a named person who's part of their role is to run this project in the school. And some other projects where it's fallen down slightly is when people have gone, yeah, that sounds great, not looked into the detail, on the day of the event have said, oh, can one of you just do X, Y, and Z for this programme? And yeah, it needs that level of investment because their insight does shape and mould the programme. And for this programme, as it's quite an involved programme, they have to do pre-programme tasks. There's a control group, there's parental consent to be part of the programme. There's 2 trips out of university. There's a workload that comes with it. So just recognising that to do it well, as with everything, you have to put a bit of effort in to make sure it's successful.
So actually, that sounds to me like it's a crucial aspect of the programme that it is built into the sort of what the school's aiming to do to improve things, that it can't really be successful as a bolt-on, as a side thought. It's got to be something like, actually, as part of what we're going to do to raise aspiration and attainment with these kids in maths, we are going to go after this sort of thing, be it the actual project or be it a variation on it, and we're going to have this plan in place, and we're going to, this person's going to have control over it, we're going to put these resources towards it. It needs that in order to be successful, really, it sounds like to me.
Yes, I think it does. I was listening to what Matt was saying, I was thinking it's a sort of wonderful thing for somebody that's a fairly early career teacher to do, because it's going to be developing their skills, to be giving them a wider context, and so something that they can then take on if they further their career as well.
Yeah, that makes certainly. Yeah, if you've got, I'm thinking from a as a previous head of maths and as a previous assistant head teacher, if I had somebody who wanted to go, was clearly sort of looking towards leadership in the future, it gives them an early taste of,
it does, yes,
of being able to coordinate something like that, maybe having to manage a small budget, certainly being organised and things like that. I was thinking it would make the potentially that it has the makings of an MPQ type project, but then I sort of thought about that again, because obviously you want that person going on year, and MPQ projects tend to be a year sort of thing. But I guess it's the sort of thing that somebody could do as an MPQ project and then continue with it and grow it after that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's definitely the sort of profile of teacher where it's worked incredibly well for us. We have a mixture of sort of heads of maths, assistant heads of maths, and teachers who've been allocated it, and it's part of their sort of personal development plan, their appraisal process. As I said, it's the research of this is going to be published at some point as well. So there is that extra sort of thing of contributing to sort of an academic piece of research, which is coming in alongside this project, and yeah, having that sort of insight and input into that process. And we'd very much see the sort of success of a programme as a partnership of us, MEI, and all the schools. So if it's successful, there's no one, we did this. This wouldn't have been possible without the teachers selecting the right students, bringing them on campus, making phone calls to parents saying they would really benefit, please fill in the consent form, making the effort to make sure there's a nice classroom space available. Like it's all of those things. So yeah, having that specific named contact who has an investment in the programme is huge for all of our programmes generally, but for this one in particular. Yeah, we're lucky that we're seeing some early signs of success, and I think it's galvanised all the schools and all of us to keep going.
Keep pushing forward. Yeah, fantastic. I'm looking forward to reading this research when it comes out as well. You have to flag it to me when it does come.
It's sort of a bit like a virtuous cycle, that when you see the success happening with a group of students, you want to build on it in the future years. But you're absolutely right, it does take the schools wanting to be invested in it. It has to be part of what they want to do to develop the school and the students. It can't just be a sort of an add-in thing that they want to do. It's got to be a sort of a fundamental part of what the school is focused on improving that year.
Brilliant. Thank you. So I guess, I mean, you've already kind of designed it from scratch again once following the first project during COVID, but if you were now going to look at it and go, right, again, let's design from scratch, what are the things that you perhaps wouldn't do now, having gone through, the original project and then these 2 years of the Accelerate project, and what are the things you would absolutely make sure were part of what remains?
Yeah, so we're quite lucky because we had a pilot year last year. We've done this process quite recently. So what we'd change and some sort of immediate feedback was about length of time on each topic. We thought, let's get them through loads of topics and that's going to be impact, but deciding to change it and going much deeper on
so I got it right. Last year it was still 12 weeks, but it was 2 weeks a topic, 6 topics.
So last year it was 10 weeks.
Right.
And it was 2 weeks per topic, and then there was like a catch-up week in the middle and a catch-up week at the end.
Right, okay. So they still did 4 topics, but they did less and they did the catch-up. But this year, you've changed that, so it's actually just 3 weeks.
3 weeks per topic. And yeah, that very much was as a result of the school feedback. And then Kath and Phil did amazing work in designing, if it's 3 weeks per topic, what does week 1 look like? What does week 2 look like? What does week 3 look like? Which is where we've got that sort of topic introduction, guided practice, exam application, structure. Which we didn't have in the first year. It was very much just spend 2 weeks on this maths topic, which we just assumed the tutors would be able to just interpret and understand teaching pedagogy, which we did, and a lot of it was relational based, and we had good relationships with tutors. But definitely that, as I've hopefully flagged already, I'm not a maths specialist, so having that teacher feedback day with all the heads of maths and all the maths teachers on the project saying, here's what needs to change, or here's what we found, was really, really important. So that's what we have changed. And similarly, we kind of wanted to try and this year a bit of a fail-safe for the tutors, because they're not maths teachers, they haven't done a PGC, they haven't got years of experience of teaching. I think some of the feedback last year was that when the students understood the topic or knew the answers, the tutors didn't really have anywhere to go because it wasn't on their lesson plan. So this year we've added in lots of extension questions, challenge questions, the types of things where for students are finding it, they've done that topic, they can get really, really challenged and start stretching themselves. And we've encouraged things like, encourage them to do things like peer teaching. Some of those standard differentiation principles that lots of teachers will already be aware of if someone gets it, get them to teach someone in a group, those sorts of things. So just making those a lot more explicit for the tutors to make sure that the higher achievers in each group are being really, really stretched and challenged and stuff as well. So that was definitely something we've changed from last year, based on that sort of teacher feedback that we've had as well. And just on a few quick practical points as well. Last year we did the launch event on campus, and the tutoring didn't start until 2 or 3 weeks later, and sort of momentum had gone. We'd forgotten to sign up for it or overaware what was going on. So this year we launched it on the Monday, and the tutoring was happening that Wednesday, a day and a half. Yeah,
Oh, nice, yeah.
So yeah, the momentum's there, the timing's a little bit better. We mistimed it last year with a couple of sort of half terms at inconvenient times, a week or so into the programme and Easter break. So yeah, we refined it a lot this year, and I think it's thus far running itself and proven to be really, the changes have made that difference. So I wouldn't say we've got anything to change for this year thus far.
But you're running the teacher focus group, I guess,
Yeah.
at the end and take the feedback and see from there. But yeah, I mean, certainly one of the things, having been involved post-COVID with the government's national tutoring programme, and running that on behalf of my school, one of the things that definitely resonates with me there is needing that, for the tutors, needing that structure of what's happening sort of here, there. And I guess you were the guys, Phil and Kath, that sort of designed that in effect.
Yeah, I mean, certainly thinking about the design of the programme, the one thing that I definitely wouldn't lose is the tutors from the university. And what we haven't quite touched on yet was actually how we choose the tutors. When I say we, I don't choose them. How UCL chooses them, but they're not looking necessarily for people who are studying maths at university. That's not the most important thing about the tutors. The most important thing about the tutors is that they are enthusiastic about maths. So we've got a variety of backgrounds that the tutors have. So some of them are doing maths degrees, some of them are doing medicine, some of them are doing computing or electronic-y type things, not really understanding what they do. We've got somebody on there this year because I asked them who's doing an art degree, but they all love maths. And that's the most important thing. And I think that it's that enthusiasm and that variety, actually, of what it is they've chosen to do with their maths that I think makes it such an important part of the programme to have that input with mentors. Would you agree with that, Phil?
I would say, yeah. I mean, the mentors for me are the key thing. We do a lot of different projects, and almost all of the ones we do with universities involve the use of a tutor or a mentor. It's either an undergraduate, in some cases a postgraduate. We have a big project that we do with 6 universities who are helping students get ready for admissions tests. And that has university mentors. And again, you can't underestimate how much those tutors really have an effect on the students. They see somebody that's closer in their age group, somebody that has that struggle with some of the maths more recent in their past, and they're much better placed in some ways to help from that point of view than their maths teachers are. So I would definitely all of these projects, I would always include tutors that are from the university, undergraduates or postgraduates, because the effect they have in terms of aspiration to start off with, but actually in terms of being closer to understanding what the problems are. You can't replace that with anything else. I think having those mentors or those tutors from universities is a key thing for all of these projects.
Yeah, and that, like you say, that sort of, even though they're a few years older, that peer that's recently been through the stage of education that they're looking to progress to, I guess, compared to someone like me who's 20 years, 25 years out of university, it makes a big difference. And I love the idea, actually, of an artist delivering maths intervention and showing kids that, yeah, I didn't go down the maths track for my extra study, but I'm an artist that loves maths. I'm an artist that still wants to engage with maths and wants to support mathematics learning. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I love that.
The other thing that I think that the mentors bring is a current understanding of the sorts of degrees that are on offer, because obviously, I'm very old, but when I went to university, nothing like the variety they've got. Even the younger teachers who are teaching these students in school will, but by necessity, they will have been 4 years since they chose their degree, at least. Whereas these are students who are currently doing it. They can talk about the different ways that you can tailor a degree. Maybe lots of degrees have got sort of optional modules and things like that that students can choose and they can consider. And I think that brings something different. so that it's not just a question of, well, we're going to sit in a classroom and do some maths. We're going to sit in a classroom, we're going to do some maths with someone who is really focused on me, but who is also able to talk about some of the other ways that they use maths. I mean, if you're studying maths at university, then you're sometimes at the cutting edge of what the latest bits of development is in maths. And that might be the bit that inspires that student to go, oh my goodness me, yes, I'm actually really interested in this cryptography, or I'm really interested in what we're going to do in AI or robotics or whatever it is that isn't something that they might have considered before. So Matt at the start was saying it's not necessarily about the aspirations, but I think it's about perhaps not aspirations. I think a lot of students do want to go on to university, but it's about opening up what's available to them there.
Broadening their horizons so they can see
yes.
what they could actually go on and do if they did raise their attainment level in mathematics.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think that's so important for the students.
Let's go on, Phil.
So at a very basic level, I think a lot of school students don't really know what university is like at all. And they can hear about it in terms of being told about it by somebody, but actually meeting somebody from the university that may have a similar background to them, that tells about their experiences, that's going to mean a whole lot more than just reading something or being told it by a teacher. It really gives them a chance to think about, is this the sort of thing I want to do? And are these the bits I want to get involved in?
And getting to actually visit the university twice in a very sort of celebratory way as well, I guess, is really motivating for them.
Yeah, we have like a mini graduation style event at the end of the programme where they officially graduate from the programme, and then that kind of unlocks all the extra benefits for having year 11 and year 12 and stuff like that.
And how do you manage those extra benefits, Matt? Sorry, just so I could, because obviously the tutors are no longer there, so does that come direct from UCL?
Yeah, so my team runs them as online interventions that they can come onto, so we'll try and time them so there'll be sort of an exam preparation session pre-GCSEs. There's like a choosing your A-level, the correct A-levels for you sort of course. Yeah. And then again, we've got, my team works in a pre-16 context, so year 11s and below. Our sort of sister team at UCL, the Access team, looks after students in year 12 and year 13. So then we hand them over as a ready-made cohort and go, please give them all the opportunities your team has. So yeah, we condense the maths progress specifically to that 12 weeks. Then after that, it's very much more that.
And so they almost get their hand held from that point all the way through to the point where they're applying for university, if they're doing it right and if they're staying engaged with UCL.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to start getting the students who did the programme last year to then be almost like in-school ambassadors for the next year. So the current year 10s, when they're in year 11 next year, they can come back and speak to the current year 10s. They can
be saying to the year 10s, actually, this was brilliant, we did this, and because of this, I've now got this. And just create that, like you said earlier, Kat, that virtuous cycle, that self-sustaining momentum to keep it running year on year on year. Yeah,
and that sort of profile in my school, one of our schools has now got like an Accelerate display board with all the pictures from the graduation events and stuff like that. So, that kind of like profile of it in my school, sitting with someone, just going back to what I said earlier, sitting with someone and getting the tutors embedded and grading the school, getting them observing lessons and making them feel part of the school just has such a positive impact, because lots of our undergrads who are in first, second, third years, we are going to come back next year and they'll be in the school again next year. And there's that really lovely relationships developing. And on the tutors as well, just to piggyback off what Phil said, we have a really, really diverse student body at UCL, but among our sort of tutoring pool, there's a huge diverse range of people. There's students from the exact same backgrounds of us. We've got students from state schools in East London going back to schools with exactly the same context of them. We also have students from completely different backgrounds to what students in our schools we work with couldn't even conceive of. Sort of students who've moved over from America and they're sort of curious about them in a slightly different way. I thought I'd like to go and study alongside people like this, or there's that mixed bag of curiosity about the sort of diversity of people at university, and also a mixture of tutors who are like them in every way, sort of from London, go to London schools.
But I guess that communicates something to those students as well, doesn't it? Because it communicates that, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are, no matter what your beliefs are, no matter what your background is, there's a place for you here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very much you've summed up my team's entire MO.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all three of you, that's been an absolutely wonderful conversation, and best of luck with the results when they come out. I would say I'll look out for the research, because I know it's going to be a great thing, and I really hope that, you know, even if it's, you know, for secondary school leaders out there, even if it's not with UCL, even if it's not with MEI, that you've got, I mean, please do. I'm sure MEI would love to hear from other people that want to do this sort of thing, and UCL the same. But there's some practical advice there for school leaders to be engaging with people like yourself, Matt, at universities, to sort of support the aspiration and the attainment of their pupils. So thank you, all three of you. That was fantastic.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.